All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on the Five Oncast, your sometimes weekly source for insights into whatever I happen to care about at the time. I'm your multidimensional co-host, Patrick Downs. Some may call me the modern Rod Serling, and today I am joined by the legendary Andy Paul. I've titled today's episode, The Pod is a Long Cast, and this one's going to be about surviving the long and winding road of a life on career sales. Welcome to the show.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Do you like the intro?
Yeah, that's great. It's fabulous.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure you've done a lot of introductions into a microphone over your life. I'm assuming.
More so over the last 4 or 5 years. Yes.
Really, really. Do you have a favorite intro that you use for yourself?
Well, it's hard to top the legendary, but I don't use that for myself. But no, just sales podcast host at this point.
I love it. I love it. So I like to start the show off with a couple personal questions. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
I swear I didn't prep him too much, folks.
You warned me. Yes.
I did. I warned you. But we're going to do 3, and I'll just get right into it. My first one, Andy, is what was the first thought that you had when you woke up this morning?
Just glad to be alive, actually. I mean, all my life I've been very optimistic person. I think it's one of the things that's carried me through my career and everything I've done is just, I look forward to every day. And I had this friend that I used to, so I'm a master swimmer, and he'd show up every morning for workouts, and he was even more optimistic than I was. He'd walk in the locker room and say, "Good day, gentlemen. It's another wonderful day to succeed." And I thought, that's a good way to put it. So, every day is an opportunity. And I really, as far back as I can remember, even in times of stress, I think that's sort of the thought that I've carried in mind to help me get through tough times is that, just another chance to live life and look forward to what's going to happen.
You said this is like as far back as you can remember. That's how you felt. Was that cultivated at all, or is that something you were kind of intrinsically always had?
That's a good question. I think intrinsically probably always have had it. My parents were sort of typical, I think, parents of baby boomer kids is that they were not too terribly involved, but supportive, and set high expectations for us. But on the other hand, kept the attitude positive. And I think that had to play into it. And then as I got into college, and college was hard, and there were a lot of hard things that went on. It was just like, I remember that's sort of the first time I was really conscious of being that way, is just waking up and thinking, okay, what can I do today?
I love that. Thank you for expounding. My next one is, have you ever been in love?
Yes. I'm currently married to, well, I'll give you the log line. The through line story is, I met the love of my life in 1972, and 35 years later we got married. So that sort of tells the story. So I met my wife in high school. We were high school sweethearts, and but just sort of went separate ways in college and stayed in touch. But we didn't have the emotional intelligence to talk about how we really felt about each other at that time, and ended up getting married to other people for 25 years. And when those marriages fell apart, we just sort of fell back into it.
That was a bit of a plot twist. I actually was not expecting that.
So, when I was turned 50, I was sort of curious what she was up to, and we hadn't really talked probably for 10 years at that point. We just sort of seemed to be in similar stages in life at the same time, and it took us a few years to actually end up meeting each other again in person, and then things happened quickly from there.
How long ago did you get married?
10 years ago.
10 years ago. Wow. How do you feel like that changed the course of your life? Because that's a pretty big shift. Like I said, it's almost like a plot twist.
Yeah. Oh, it has been huge. It was, as an individual, she was much more supportive of me personally in terms of things I wanted to do in my career. And so we got married. I was in San Diego. She lived in New York. She had what I call the real job. She's an associate dean and a professor at NYU School of Medicine. And I could do my business from anywhere. So I moved from San Diego to New York. And once there, I was sort of like, okay, yeah, I've several times in my career sort of reinvented myself. And at that point, I was saying, okay, what do I really want to do? And yeah, let's write my first book and start blogging, start building a brand, profile on social media, so on. And she was extremely supportive of that in a way that hadn't been supported before. And so, yeah, it was transformational for me.
This might actually feed into the next one, but my last question is, what memories do you typically go to for comfort when you're in distress or in a bad situation?
Well, I mean, her. Yeah, my wife, Vicky. I mean, I think that's first and foremost. Yeah, as a relationship where one of those strong connections that never really died over the course of time, even though we hadn't been together. And yeah, it's everything for me.
I'm gonna have to go back and retitle the episode "True Love Is Real." Cast. Like that's gonna be the through line.
Well,
it's wonderful.
When you find it, take it. So, yeah. But yeah, no regrets about the marriages we had, because we each have two wonderful kids as a result of it. And yeah, don't look back, but it's all a matter of sort of consistent with everything else. Let's just look forward.
I love it. I love it. Can you trace anything in your career to those stages? Do you feel like they're intertwined in a way and you've made moves in those periods? I know a lot of people say that happens.
And connected to
like relationship changes.
Well, they certainly, yeah. I mean, if you don't want to wish divorce on anybody. It's fortunately my ex-wife and I are still friends, and as I said, we have two great kids that we still do things together. But when you go through the tough times, it has an impact on your performance for sure. You like to think that you're just soldiering through and no one can tell, and you look back and it's like, oh yeah, that wasn't good. I mean, it was just whether the energy's not right or you're just preoccupied, and so there's sort of two sort of short periods of my career where that once when my ex-wife and I first separated, but then got back together, but then when we finally divorced, there was just it's as well as you think it's going, it's never appearing that way to other people. So we're quite good at fooling ourselves about that. But yeah, I mean, it's just sort of fact of life. So, but didn't sidetrack my career or anything. It's just sort of what was.
Love it. So switching gears a bit.
Sure.
Main topic is the long and winding road of sales, right? You've been in the game for a while. It's 96 in sales. Is that accurate, or was it before?
1977.
77. Okay. All right. Well, I was
going. I know
you're
looking at me and you're thinking you can't possibly be that old. And thank you.
You're very welcome. What was your first sales job in 77?
So first sales job right out of school in sales, selling computers to businesses for accounting applications. So what were called mini computers at the time, and they were anything but mini compared to what preceded them. And for a company called Burroughs. At the time, Burroughs was the second largest computer company in the world, behind IBM. And my job, I was in San Francisco Bay Area, based out of Oakland, and I focused on selling to the construction industry. So building contractors, road construction companies, heavy industry construction companies, a lot of infrastructure, bridge builders and so on. So that was sort of my my focus for the first 2 years before I got promoted into management. But yeah, I was out sort of prototypical field sales job, based in an office. We'd show up, we'd leave the office at 8:30 and go out and make calls, drive to a business park, or, you know, early, we had sort of an apprenticeship before we got started. Burroughs still had some legacy products that the newbies had to sell, which were these desktop adding machines they'd sell to bookkeepers and so on. And yeah, you had to go out and sell a certain number of calculators, certain dollar amount of calculators. And it's $5,000 worth, I believe, before you could get trained to sell computers. And so yeah, I was 30, 40, 50 calls a day. Drive to a business park, park my car, walk door to door to door.
$5,000 worth of calculators. I've never even thought of calculators in the thousands. It's just a funny concept.
Yeah. Well, they cost about $250, but a piece. They're big. They're like the size of a small microwave oven. But yeah, I sort of was into it and was doing it, and finally said, God, there's got to be a better way. And so we actually had one model of calculator that cost about $2,000, and it was a programmable calculator. You programmed with mag stripe cards that looked like credit cards or hotel keys, and you programmed in assembler. So I taught myself how to, one weekend, I decided, well, I don't want to go out and sell 20 at $250 a piece. I just want to sell 2 of these big ones and be done with it. And so that's what I did. So I took the manual home one weekend, taught myself how to program in assembly code, basically, and found a client pretty soon thereafter that wanted me to create sort of a billing program for them, which I did. They were a chocolate company, so it's always fun to go down there. And then I sold another one, I think, to an auto dealer for some sort of like credit calculation. And yeah, got done with it reasonably quickly at that point. And so that's always sort of the hallmark of the way I've tried to sell, which is, what's the best way to sell the biggest thing I can that provides the biggest benefit to the company. And if I have to go teach myself how to program, teach myself how to program.
That's wild. I can't imagine doing that like today, like in a weekend.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like,
it's amazing.
You got to do what you want to do, right? Is there was no one telling me no. And actually, I have this tendency to ignore people that tell me no. And it just seemed a more efficient way, because I wanted to be trained how to, couldn't be trained to sell the computers till we hit that milestone. And I wanted to get trained to sell the big stuff. So yeah, I just took a different path than most people did.
Do you think that's part of why you've been able to last this long? Because typically most people, when they're in sales and they burn out, it's because they're just they're just doing what they're being told. It's like, do this amount of calls, hit this number, and then they get burned out because they're sick of doing the same thing every day.
Yeah, well, I think it's a problem. Yeah, I think that managers don't do enough to try to develop people to become the best version of themselves. And that sometimes means selling a way that's unique to their strengths, right? So I was, I guess, fortunate enough to have managers that gave me enough rope to hang myself and said, yeah, you want to do it that way? Sure, go ahead. And there have been multiple points throughout my career where that's happened. So in sales, you pay the consequence if you can't execute. If you're asked to do something different and you can't pull it off, then you're gonna be gone. But I did. And so, yeah, I've always sort of wanted to do things my way, and partially because I'm not, I'm an introvert. I'm not a conventional salesperson in that regard. It's a little harder for me to meet strangers, but I've, developed a way of being effective and engaging at a human level with other people, and building that personal relationship that's so critical. But yeah, I always sort of envied the people that it came so easily to. But I came up with my own way of doing it. And then when it came to developing my pipeline and so on, I always tended to run relatively slim on my pipeline, because I was a fanatic, and I am a fanatic about qualifying opportunities. So if someone has a qualified opportunity for me, I thought I was going to win it, and I would win a high fraction of it. So, my pipeline was maybe 2x compared to the 5x that you see in most SaaS companies and so on. Because for me, it wasn't enough to say that somebody was qualified to buy a product sort of like mine. They were qualified to buy my product. And that's the way that I approached it. And so, if I was effective at putting forward my value proposition that was unique, hopefully, and they were qualified to buy it, then I said, yeah, they can stay. If not, I didn't pay any attention to them. So it's really, placing bets to some degree that you could execute, that I could execute once I had a qualified prospect. But that's, for me, that was how I wanted to do it, because then I could apply more of my time to those opportunities that were really qualified. And I thought if I could do that, then I would increase my odds of winning.
I love that. And like that fits you, right? That's the kind of person you are. You make a bet on yourself. And I know when we were talking, you talked a lot about personal reinvention too, which in a way is betting on yourself.
Absolutely.
What does that mean to you specifically though? When you said that to me over email, well, what did you mean?
Well, it's investing in yourself to learn something completely new, right? And a new challenge. And so, I was having a conversation with a younger rep last week about, how do you make career choices in sales? And he was always talking about, or he, not always, but he was talking about, the money and so on. And I said, for me, it was always about, what am I going to learn? Because if to maintain my interest in it is, I wanted to always be learning something new. And so for me, the two most important factors were, is this an opportunity where I was really going to learn something new? And the person I was working for, were they going to be the person that could teach me that? And that's how I made my decision. So I wanted to work for really smart people in industries that perhaps I hadn't had experience in before. So I wasn't really, for a good chunk of it, wasn't leveraging one experience into the other. Though I did that in a couple of cases, but it's just do something different. And that's, for me, is what's kept it interesting. So that's what the reinvention was, is like, I'd never been a consultant before I started my own company. I'd never written a book before. There's a lot you have to learn to write a book, a lot you have to learn to start, blogging and start podcasting and all these things I've been doing for the last 9-10 years. They were brand new to me. It was great. The later stages of my career is to be so excited about what I could learn and that's new. And it's still true today. I have 820 episodes of my podcast as of today. We're still doing 3 episodes a week. And I love it because every time I talk to somebody, I learn something new.
I have a mentor that said, like, if he's not doing something that's giving him butterflies, he feels like he's in the wrong place. Like, I want to get butterflies like once a month at least.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know, about 7 years ago, I was looking for a coach to help me on public speaking. And I narrowed it down to 2 people, one of whom was this woman named Patricia Fripp, who's a very well-known public speaker in sales and marketing world, and past president of National Speakers Association and so on. And she's this very sort of small but intimidating, formidable personality, British, and though lives in San Francisco. And for rock fans, her brother was the famous rock guitarist, Robert Fripp. And so, I interviewed Patricia and this other gentleman, and both came highly recommended. And at the end, I decided to go with Patricia. And my wife said, why? And I said, because she scared the hell out of me. And that's where you have to gravitate to, right? Is gravitate toward the things that scare you. And certainly writing a book, putting your opinions on a page and putting it out there is incredibly daunting. And it scared the hell out of me. Podcasting, same thing, public speaking, everything I've done over the last 10 years, but all throughout my career before that. Selling a lot of stuff internationally. We were selling some of the first systems of their type in China and India. And I went to the Soviet Union, sold some there. And it's just, it was all sort of scary, but fun.
I don't think anybody on their deathbed would ever be like, oh man, I wish I didn't get on that stage and do that speech. Like, I wish I didn't make that career move. Like, that's the stuff that you need to look back at and be like, you're not going to regret it. There's no way.
No, and the experience you get from it. And if people disagree with you, so what? I mean, that's your fear, right? Somebody's going to say, well, that's wrong. And that's sort of the bar I used when I started public speaking. My wife would ask me, well, how'd it go? And I said, well, no one stood up and called me an idiot, so I think it's okay. So, and people rarely do, though. They might on social media, but not in person. But yeah, it's so much fun to do those things. And yeah, I sort of wish I'd started a little bit earlier in my career. But on the other hand, I was gathering knowledge that I could use in this, that I could impart to people.
Why do you think you've stayed in sales specifically with a lot of this?
Just because it's, as I said, it's this opportunity to learn, right? I mean, I tell people that my podcast is perhaps the most selfish thing I've done in my life because, I've talked to all these really smart people. So far 820 smart people that I've learned from. And I always looked at sales in the same way as, as I going out and meeting a customer, typically they were a prospect. Yeah, for the most part, they're smart people, successful business people. They, were in a position to make decisions for, systems worth tens of millions of dollars and so on. So it was just fun to meet people and learn. And for 13 years of my career, I was doing a big chunk of it overseas. So in Europe and in Asia and Australia, South America, where else, you get exposed to different cultures, different people, different ways of looking at things that I just found was fascinating. So as much of that than, it wasn't really ever really about the product I was selling. I mean, it wasn't like I felt passionate about the product. It was, though I was, in terms of I thought they delivered great value to the people using it, but are the other things that really, got me on the airplanes and got me over there is the people.
Yeah, there's not a lot of jobs where you get paid to just go talk to people all day. That is a big benefit.
Yeah, well, and that enjoy it, because I think, again, I think that's some of the perspective that salespeople lose is they think that selling is something they do to people. And I learned from mentors early on that, to be successful, selling is actually something you do with the prospect. And this is a joint journey that you take, and start from that premise, and it's a completely different way of approaching it. And I think sellers miss out too much when they get thinking about, sort of a destination as opposed to the journey itself.
Yeah, a lot of the language gets turned into like, this person did something to me kind of thing. This person
Yeah,
lied to me. They didn't buy because of this. And yeah, it's an oppositional mindset instead of a
adversarial. Yeah, absolutely.
cooperative.
Yeah, well, I think that's sort of the way that I use that term adversarial is, people treat it like a trial, where you've got lawyers, arguing a case. That's not really the perspective you want to have. It's because that's all about persuasion, and people this natural resistance to being persuaded. So, I look at it more from perspective as how can I influence the choices they're going to make through the actions that I take to ask great questions and to really understand and keep asking until I truly understand what it is they're trying to achieve and how we can best help them. That's, again, a different mindset, different perspective about how you approach it, but that's the one that keeps you in the game for a long time.
Those skills specifically with your influence, how has that impacted how you interview and host a podcast?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's due really down to the curiosity. I have written in the past that, I graduated college, I had no discernible job skills at all. So I went into sales, and the only thing I brought with me into sales was an insatiable curiosity and a competitive streak a mile wide. And that's still fundamentally the case, right? It's this curiosity, as we talk about throughout the episode, is what drives me. It's what, motivates me. And people think that when you say influencers persuasion, that you're not competitive, that you're, it's a soft approach. And it's like, no, furthest from it. I mean, I sold a lot in my career, and I was hugely competitive. I hated to lose. And so I tried to do everything in my power ethically to not lose, and so it's exercising my creativity about, okay, do I really understand the problem the customer's trying to solve? And if I do, how can we be creative and come up with a way to solve it that gives them more value and really shuts out the competition? And so we're always looking at perspective as, how can we, I use the term, how can I take this prospect off the market? That was what I was trying to do. I was trying to make them unavailable to my competitors. And if I could do enough on the front end of the deal in terms of the questioning and the relationship we built and truly coming to an early understanding of what it is they were trying to do, when people feel understood, that's a huge source of value to them. And it's a key differentiator if they think you really understand them. Because it's one of the real complaints about sellers. They don't understand. They don't know enough about our business to provide insights or help us go the path we want. And yeah, I tried to go the opposite direction. And so especially when I was working bigger deals, is I typically knew, yeah, months before the decision was made that I was probably going to win, because we had hit that point where I knew they feel understood by me. And at that point, we'd continue to build on that and present them with the options that were perhaps the best options for helping them achieve their desired outcomes. And so I love that ability to be really creative about that. Because again, you're helping somebody, you're sort of transforming their lives in the process. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's weird because I love doing that too. But in software sales, there's this whole culture on both the buyer and the seller side of give me a demo, cool, buy, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then everybody internalizes that when they sell. And not everybody's like that, but everyone just assumes that. So anytime I take a demo, it's really no one says anything to me besides, hey, here's our dashboard. And they just walk me through the entire product.
Mm-hmm.
There's no questions. It's every time. I don't think I've had a single demo that's not like that. It's absurd.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, the customers don't really want that. They just sort of think, well, this is what we should do because this is the way it's been done to us. Yeah, break the mold. Believe me. Yeah, the reason that a customer or prospect talks to a salesperson is not necessarily because they want to, but because they have to. Right? When people make decisions, there's something at risk. Right? It could be we're risking the potential outcome, we're risking not the company not changing some aspect of the business that when they want to change by using this new tool. The decision maker perhaps is risking their career by making the wrong recommendation. So there's all this risk. So they want to talk to somebody because they want to validate their assumptions. They want to validate what they think is the right decision, the right choices to make by talking to another human being. So they want to talk to you, but they're just going to go the easy route, as you talked about. Yeah, just do the demo, if they think you've got nothing else to add. And so it's really up to you as a seller to demonstrate that, yeah, you can add more value to that than what they're expecting. And this is how you're going to do it. And it could be, I think one imperative, I think, for sellers today is that, not enough emphasis put on understanding business itself. We'll call it business acumen, but it has a huge impact on the questions you ask, the follow-up, more importantly, the follow-up questions you ask, and your ability to truly understand what the buyer's concerns are. And so if I was listening to the show and saying, well, geez, what could I work on first and foremost to help sort of break this pattern you talked about? I'd be reading business books. I'd make sure you understand how to read an income statement, a balance sheet. You understand ratios in business. You understand how business operates. You understand how your customer's business makes money. Without that understanding, it's always going to be superficial and transactional. And you got to move beyond the transactional to break that pattern that you're talking about.
People love talking about it too. You can even just ask.
Yeah,
early on in an industry, hey, how do you guys make money? And they go on for 20 minutes about it.
People love to talk about themselves, and that's okay. Let them. I mean, that's how you build a relationship. You let people talk about the things that's important to them, and you just need to ask the right questions. And yeah, they'll pour their hearts out about it. I think that again, sellers, just have to do more reading and learning about things. So there's this thing called bounded rationality. Herbert Simon was a psychologist, economist, Nobel Prize winner back. He did this work in the 50s, but I think he won the prize later in life. But where he says, look, people basically look at things from two perspectives. They look at it from and this is part of it, it's not the main thrust of that philosophy, but people look at things in two perspectives as a decision maker is, what's this mean for the business? What's this mean for me? And so rarely do I hear sellers talk about, analyzing a call they had, or you look at their call description, and it's like, yeah, you didn't ask the question. So what's this going to mean for this person? What's the impact going to be on them personally? And so when you look at your questioning, you sort of look at it a little bit like a funnel, but start with the bigger one. What would be the impact on the business if they could do this? What would the value be they could derive from it? Great. What about your division that you work in? Get closer. What about your team? What's it going to mean for you? And when you have that information, you've got so much more information about how the decision is going to be made, and what's important to them. People just don't dig deep enough. And it's just a matter of questions. And if you build the relationship and you have the trust, they'll open up and tell you.
I feel like I've learned a lot here. Yeah, this was a selfish conversation. Thank you for laying that on me.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Of course, it has
been.
Great
questions.
Thank you. And as we part, imagine that there is a young sales youngster guy sitting on a porch sipping some coffee, wistfully thinking, do I get out of this field? Like, what do I do? What do I do now? What is your parting word of wisdom to them?
Stay in it, because I think one of the huge values in sales is that it's one of the few places where you're really judged for what you actually do. And that's always been important for me. A staff job, what are you being judged on, right? Can you really measure what your contribution is? I mean, in some cases you can, other cases it's a little more obscure. And so, I think if you really want to have a life where your rewards that come to you are based purely on, or largely on, the efforts, your own efforts, and the own work you put into it, then I think sales is the best place to be.
I think so too. They're going to have to drag me out dead at this point.
Well, at my age, that's a more likelihood, but so I agree. It's well worth staying in, and we're going to see some changes coming with technology. They'll be very exciting if people are willing to use the technology in the right way. And I think the future is still exciting.
It is. I think we'll get to a point where you're actually doing more of the fun part, which is just having conversations. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. And I think if we were using the technology correctly today, even, there's been a huge infusion of technology into sales in the last 10 years, especially in the last 5 years. But I think that some of that would be happening now. But unfortunately, a lot of it's being used just to automate bad behaviors rather than find a way to amplify good behaviors.
That's a great note to leave on, Andy. I appreciate that. For people that want to connect with you online, what is the best way for them to do so?
LinkedIn.
So
LinkedIn. So it's the usual preamble on LinkedIn, and it's real Andy Paul, except no substitutes. But real Andy Paul, or just search for Andy Paul, you'll find me. Only one with the podcast, I believe. So, but that's the most effective way. And then you can always email me at andy@andypaul.com.
Anything you want to plug? Anything coming out?
Listen to the podcast. I mean, not to compete against yours, but Sales Enablement Podcast with Andy Paul. We've 820 episodes. The episode that was released today was really fun. It was interviewed my first sales manager, which was a gas. So I urge people to go listen to that. But we've had some great episodes recently, also dealing with more topical issues like mental health in sales, sexism in sales, and so on, that I think people really need to listen to.
I love it. I'm going to go listen to that right after this, Andy. Well, I appreciate you being here. And if anybody else wants to connect with me or Andy online, go to LinkedIn. I'm just waiting for one person to say Twitter or something different. It's always LinkedIn. But thanks for listening to the 5 On Cast for the sometimes not weekly insights into whatever I care about at the time. I'm again your immaterial co-host, Patrick Downs, the Dr. Manhattan of the modern age. I'm different this time. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and follow 5 On Friday on LinkedIn, YouTube, and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and Anchor. You are beautiful just the way you are. Please don't ever change. Catch you next time.